There's a trap that nobody talks about, and it's not the trap of being lazy or quitting too early or not working hard enough. This one's a little bit different because this one actually hits the people who did the work, the people who tried, who got better. So let's say you got even competent, right? Maybe you got really good at something and somehow you're more stuck than you've ever been. Because one of the most dangerous things that can happen to you is getting good at the wrong life. If you've been putting years into a life that doesn't feel like yours, then this video is for you. Here's what most of us were told, right? The enemy is being bad at things. Like if you got good, just good enough, right? Worked hard enough, learned enough, eventually the life you actually want would just show up. But here's something that happens that to a lot of us that nobody warned us about, right? We get good, we put in the time, we get promoted, we get skilled, we get efficient, and instead of that feeling like we're finally moving, it starts to feel like a sentence because we got trapped by our own competence. Think about it. The job you hate, you're decent at it, maybe really good. And because you're good at it, you get more responsibility, which means more money, which means now you need that money to what? Just survive, which means leaving now feels almost impossible. And then you get even better and the chain gets shorter, right? Every skill you build in the wrong direction is another link. And the worst part, nobody around you sees a problem. To them, you're doing well, you're succeeding. From the outside looking in, you look exactly like what you're supposed to look like. But on the inside, that gap between what your life looks like and what it actually feels like, that's the trap. So how does this actually happen? How do smart, capable people end up building a life they don't want? Here's the thing nobody told us. We were handed the direction before we were ever old enough to choose one, right? You followed the path that was available. You did the thing your environment said made sense. Maybe it's what your parents understood. Maybe it's what paid. I don't know. Maybe it's just what was in front of you, right? When you needed something. And because you're actually capable, you adapted. You got good at it. But here's a difference between being adaptable and being aligned. Adaptable means you can function in something. Aligned means you actually belong there. And a lot of us, we got really good at being adaptable while the version of ourselves that needed to be aligned just waited. I know this personally. I spent about 2 years working for a company where I got really good at customer service and sales, right? I knew how to talk to people, I knew how to handle problems, how to help somebody else's business make money. And honestly, I could have stayed there for years. I probably would have made more money, over time. I would have even maybe become more valuable to the company. I know for sure I would have, right? But there was always this thought in the back of my mind that if I keep doing this, where does this actually take me? Because no matter how good I became, there was always going to be a ceiling, if it was still somebody else's company, right? Somebody else's vision. And I know, or I guess I knew that the freedom that I wanted was going to require me to build something that was mine, right? But that scared the hell out of me. you know, I I would look at the owner, I remember, who had to deal with the pressure, the decisions, the problems, and it was like every day nonstop. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't know if I can handle that, right? And the job gave me a comfortable place to avoid ever finding that out, right? Because I wasn't failing, I was actually doing well, but I was getting better and better at building a life I already knew I didn't want. And that's a strange place to be because from the outside, nothing looks wrong. You're just operating perfectly, but you're in the wrong place. And if you stay there long enough, it doesn't only affect what you do, it starts changing who you believe you are. Let's talk about what that actually costs you. Not just time, though it can cost you time, right? And years. Not just money, though it can cost you that too. But what it costs you is the version of yourself you haven't built yet. Because when you spend long enough getting better at the wrong thing, you don't just stay in a holding pattern. You start building an identity around it, right? You become the person who does that job, who has that role, who lives that routine, right? And slowly what happens without realizing it, the question stops being, is this right for me? And it starts becoming, who am I without this? And that's the trap. The wrong life starts becoming your identity. And then leaving doesn't just feel risky, it feels like losing yourself. We've all seen this, right? Someone who has been somewhere for 10 or 12 years and they know they're in the wrong place. People look at them and say, they're just scared, they just got comfortable, but that's not really what's happening. What's happening is they connected their identity to a role. And walking away from that role means walking away from who they think they really are. And that's not fear of change, that's an identity problem dressed up as a career problem. So, what do you do with this, right? And I want to be clear, this isn't me telling you to quit your job tomorrow, burn it down, start fresh, move to Bali, That's not what this is. This is about one distinction that most people never make. What you're good at is not automatically what you should build your life around. Your skills are tools, right? They don't own your direction. They don't define where you belong. They just define what you're currently capable of. And the second you separate those two things, the second you stop confusing your competence with your identity and start having options, you start having options again. Because here's something that's actually true, and I want you to hear this, okay? The skills you built in the wrong direction, they don't just disappear when you change direction. If you're resourceful, you stay resourceful. If you can work hard, that doesn't leave when you leave the wrong place. If you've got the ability to push through something difficult, that comes with you, right? It comes with you wherever you go. What changes is where those skills get aimed, right? Because the trap isn't that you got good at the wrong thing. The trap is believing that your capability belongs to that wrong thing, that it can't come with you, that you'd be starting over from nothing. You wouldn't be starting over. You'd be redirecting, right? And there's a massive difference in that. Starting over means all that work meant nothing, but redirecting means all that work was building the person who's finally ready to go the right way. And that's what happened to me. Around 19, I remember I met a few mentors who introduced me to very specific tools that changed how I learned and how I handled pressure, because leaving that job wasn't just enough. I still had to become someone who could communicate better, sell, lead people, solve problems, and deal with the stress that came with building, something of my own. Those weren't skills I naturally believed I had, but with the right tools and the right people around me, I was able to actually build them. And over the next few years, I took the skills I already had and I aimed it in a different direction. And I built a business that produced over $1 million in sales in just my mid 20s, right? That's why I don't believe changing direction always means throwing your past away. Sometimes everything you've been through was preparing you. You just hadn't aimed it at something you actually wanted yet. And if you're curious about the specific tools that help me to learn the skills that, to handle that level of pressure, just send me the word tools on Instagram and I'll share with you what I personally used. If you were watching this and somewhere in this video you thought, damn, that's exactly where I am, I want to ask you something. Do you know what direction you actually want to aim all of that toward? Because recognizing that you're in the wrong place is one thing, but figuring out what comes next is a completely different conversation. So tell me in the comments, what have you gotten good at that you're no longer sure you want to spend your life doing? And if you want to talk about your situation more personally, just send me an a DM on Instagram. I have a link to that below, and you could, I don't know, send me the words "I feel stuck" and tell me what you're doing now, what you're good at, and what you actually want your life to look like. And if you're interested in the tools and the mentorship that help me learn new skills, handle more pressure, building something on my own, then just send me the word tools again. And make sure you subscribe, because if these are the kinds of conversations you've been looking for, I'm building this channel for people who know they're capable of more, but feel like nobody ever gave them the full map. Now, before you try to redirect your life, there's another question you need to answer. Are you actually moving towards something right now, or are you just working hard enough to feel like you are? Because you can't stay busy for years and still end up in the same place, right? And that's exactly what I break down in this video right here. It'll help you figure out whether all the work you're putting in is actually creating progress or just taking you deeper into the wrong direction. So check the video that you see on your screen, and I'll see you there.